Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, senior editor at Forbes. Tropical storm Melissa is currently south of Haiti, but it is brewing and could become a major hurricane. Joining us now to tell us what we need to know about this storm is AccuWeather lead hurricane forecaster Alex DaSilva. Alex, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so take us through this storm. Where is it now, and what do we know about it?
Yeah, the storm is located just south of Haiti right now, somewhere in this area here. The center's not really all that defined right now. The hurricane hunters have been flying around doing a cross pattern in here, trying to locate the center, but the center has actually been drifting a little bit southeast, believe it or not, underneath some of this higher thunderstorms, and it's been actually drifting a little bit, like I said, to the southeast over the last 12 or so hours. So the storm still remains disorganized right now, and that's in part due to a lot of wind shear that's coming out of the northwest. So those are winds that are changing with height as you go up into the atmosphere, and it's essentially tilting the storm over onto its side, basically. And it's preventing the storm from really blowing up right now. But what we've been seeing here over the last 12 hours is some of that wind shear is starting to back away right now. It's starting to lift to the north. And so we do expect the storm to start to strengthen later on today. And then I think this weekend is when we're really going to start to see some of that more rapid intensification. If we take a look at our cone here, we can see down here at the bottom, Melissa right now is a tropical storm, but we expect it to become a Category 3 major hurricane by Sunday, and then eventually becoming a Category 4 hurricane early next week, before eventually making a turn and making landfall in western Jamaica sometime probably on Tuesday, like I said, as a major hurricane. And there's even the opportunity, I think, for this to even exceed Category 4 status and get to Category 5.
All right, let's get into that path a little bit. So it looks like it's going to curve, as you said, northeast. And for folks in the United States and Puerto Rico, when do they have to really start to be on guard? And is the cone going to affect? I'm looking at Florida, I'm looking at South Carolina. What will be the effects that folks living in those states feel?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, Puerto Rico right now has actually been dealing with a lot of rain from this. Believe it or not, you can see the storm is way out in this area here south of Haiti, like we discussed, but there's actually been some bands of rain that are loosely related with the storm that have actually clipped Puerto Rico here over the last couple of days, and actually brought some pretty heavy rain to the islands. So I would expect those to continue through today and maybe even into tomorrow while the storm consolidates. Once the storm starts to consolidate and tighten up, I think some of these more outer rain bands will begin to dissipate as all the thunderstorms will kind of co-locate more around the center. So for the residents of Puerto Rico, keep an eye out for localized flash flooding here over the next day or so. We've already seen some reports of that, especially across the western portion of the island. So we do want to be careful there. As far as the United States mainland goes, we do need to keep a close eye out for this storm. Right now, we do expect the storm to lift across eastern Cuba and then head out towards Bermuda, staying well east of the United States. However, there are some indications, some model guidance that does suggest that the storm could come a little bit further to the west, and maybe track a little bit closer to the western side of that cone there, maybe even close enough to bring some impacts to the United States. Now, that is not currently our favored track. We do favor a track further out to sea right now. We think the track closer to the United States is much less likely in the current time frame. But right now, due to the slow motion of the storm and the chaotic behavior of its track in the short term, we still cannot clear anybody from Florida all the way up to Atlantic Canada quite yet from potential impacts from this storm. And that is why we really want people to follow the AccuWeather forecast very closely over the next couple of days for any potential shifts in that track.
From Florida all the way to Atlantic Canada. And I'm seeing, does that say 8 p.m. Friday, October 31st, when it looks like it's kind of getting up into the northeastern part of the U.S.?
Yeah, again, it should be offshore. The northeastern part of the U.S. is in here. So again, we do favor a track more out to sea at the current time. But again, we're going to have to watch it very carefully. Here's another diagram showing our most likely track and our least likely track right now, given all the data that we currently have right now. Like I said, expecting a track near or just over the western portion of Jamaica, and then across eastern Cuba, and then towards Bermuda. But there is a potential that it could come closer, although we think it's less likely. The storm should be kicked out to sea by a big dip in the jet stream coming into the east. You can see that dip in the jet stream here. That should act to kick the storm out. However, I will caution, if this piece of energy is a little bit slower or is a little tilted back a little bit more, that could allow the storm to come up and closer to the United States. And there are several computer models that show that. Again, we don't think that that's the most likely scenario, but it's something that we definitely have to keep an eye out for.
So in the most likely scenario, if the storm does swing out east towards Bermuda, what could the effects on Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina be? Is it light rain? Is it light wind? Is it some storm surge, or none of the above?
Yeah, so right now we do think that the storm will be far enough off the coast where we probably really won't see any wind or rain impacts from the storm. But I will say this, everyone from Florida all the way up to the Northeast needs to be careful because of the coastal hazards. As this storm moves up, even if it's well away from the coast like that, we're still going to be dealing with some beach erosion issues and very dangerous rip currents starting during the middle of next week down in the Southeast and going up through next weekend. So that's something that beachgoers are going to have to be aware of. Of course, it's cooling down in the Northeast, so there's less beachgoers up in the Northeast, but still a lot of beachgoers, especially across portions of the Southeast, and those folks will want to take care because there could still be some very, very dangerous rip currents, even if the storm is hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the U.S. coastline.
Now, earlier in this conversation, Alex, you referred to the storm in its current iteration as disorganized, and this is perhaps a geeky meteorology question, but does a disorganized storm make it more or less dangerous in terms of how it could develop?
That's a great question, because the fact that it's actually more disorganized right now is actually what's causing that rain further east in Puerto Rico right now. If this was a consolidated storm, you would have all those rain bands really tight, close to the center of the circulation. Of course, you would have stronger winds and heavier rain overall, but they wouldn't be as spread out. When you have a disorganized storm, or a storm that's really trying to get its act together, you have these rain bands that are much further away from the center of circulation. So we've seen very heavy rain in Puerto Rico. We've seen a lot of videos coming out of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic of big time flooding there, even though the storm is well away from there. So that is kind of the problem with storms that are disorganized. They might not have the wind strength of a more powerful storm, but sometimes their impacts can be far reaching away from the center of circulation. And like I said, we're dealing with some big time flooding already, and we're expecting that flooding to get to catastrophic levels, especially in Western Haiti and Jamaica over the next couple of days as this storm slowly begins to move to the northwest. We're going to be dealing, I think, with a potentially humanitarian crisis here because of this heavy rain. We are going to be measuring, I think, the rain in feet, not in inches, in portions of Western Haiti and in Jamaica here. Again, a lot of this is just due to the fact that the storm is going to be crawling along. Right now, you can walk faster than what the storm is moving right now, only a couple of miles per hour. And by the time this storm gets all set and finished here, like I said, we're going to be looking at some big time rain amounts, feet potentially of rainfall. We have an AccuWeather local storm max here, 50 inches, and some guidance suggests that 50 might not even be able to hold it. It might even end up being higher than 50. So a very concerning storm here. And Haiti is almost all deforested. They've cut down most of their trees in Haiti. So those trees are very important because they can hold in some of that water as we get that very heavy rain. And unfortunately, much of Haiti is deforested. So when this rain comes down, there's really nothing to hold it together here, and it just runs right down the mountain and causes mudslides. So that is why we are exceptionally concerned about a lot of these places over the next couple of days. Even as the storm does begin to consolidate and strengthen into a major hurricane, the rain bands will likely get closer to the center of circulation, but the storm will still be close enough to Haiti Cuba, and in Jamaica to cause some significant issues.
So even though it is not yet a Category 3 hurricane or a Category 4, you and AccuWeather are projecting potentially catastrophic flooding, humanitarian crisis in Haiti and also Jamaica. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And again, a lot of that is just due to the very slow motion. We've seen some of these storms in the United States. You think back to Harvey in the Texas area, in the Houston area, how much rain it brought there, 40 plus inches of rain. These slow moving storms can cause a lot of devastation. And Texas, eastern Texas, where Harvey hit, there's really no mountains there. In this area, it's extremely, extremely mountainous. And so what happens is the winds push that the air right across and into the mountains that rises up, and those mountains act like sponges and squeeze out all of that moisture from the atmosphere. And so when you have mountains, that can make the situation much, much worse. And we have big time mountains in eastern Cuba and Haiti, Dominican Republic, and in Jamaica that I think are going to cause a lot of that rain to be squeezed out. We are very concerned about mudslides as well. A lot of roads are going to be washed out from this. Some roads are already being washed out across the island of Hispaniola. And there could be areas, small towns in here that could be cut off for days to weeks potentially, depending on the amount of rain that they get.
That does indeed sound catastrophic. Alex, what is your recommendation to anyone who lives in the areas you just mentioned? Is there anything they can do to protect themselves?
Yeah, certainly heed the advice of local officials. If you live near any kind of rivers or anything like that, we want people to listen to their local officials. If those local officials are telling you to get away from those rivers because they're concerned about water rise due to the heavy rain, please heed their advice and get to higher ground. But also do be mindful that mountain or mudslides are also probably going to be pretty common as well. So we want people to listen to their local officials when they tell you to move to a certain designated area that they deem safe. We recommend people to do that in these locations because it does look like there's going to be a devastating amount of rain. Never mind the wind that's also going to come with this and the storm surge that we could be seeing on Jamaica as well. We're concerned here about a storm surge potentially of 6 to 10 feet coming into Kingston, Jamaica here from the south. The storm's going to be moving something like this. And so everywhere east of that center of circulation, you're just going to be piling up the water in here into these little bays and coves in Jamaica here. So 6 to 10 foot storm surge across most of the southern portion of Jamaica, including an AccuWeather local storm max of 15 feet above normally dry ground. So you think about if you go to the beach, you stick your feet in the ocean, just imagine 15 feet straight up and then straight inland. That could be potentially, in a more worst case scenario, what we could be seeing in portions of Jamaica.
And that's Friday to Sunday, correct?
That is correct. That's when we think the worst of the surge is going to be here in Jamaica over the next couple of days. But I think it could even extend beyond that as well, because the storm is actually going to be approaching. We actually are having landfall on Tuesday in Jamaica. So we probably will have to extend that a couple of days as well. So starting today, the water is probably going to be coming up a little bit, but the worst of the surge is likely going to be on Tuesday as that storm looks like it's going to make landfall in western Jamaica.
Worst of the storm on Tuesday, but catastrophic flooding between now and then. Any other final words of warning to anyone in Puerto Rico, in Jamaica, in Haiti, or even in Florida, South Carolina, Bermuda, a little further north than the areas we were just discussing?
Yeah, again, due to the slow nature of the storm and the tendency of this storm to meander around, we can get slightly different solutions with where this low pressure ends up going, where this eventual hurricane ends up going. So it's more important than ever in a situation like this where we have a very slow moving, meandering storm to really follow the forecast every single day, multiple times per day, because the forecast can still change. Sometimes when we have storms, the steering patterns are much more straightforward, and we know, okay, it's going to move from east to west at 20 miles per hour, and it's going to be at this location, and we're much more confident due to the fact that the steering patterns are much more straightforward. With this storm, the steering patterns are a lot more chaotic, and in fact, those steering patterns are very weak right now. That's why why the storm is almost having a mind of its own. So we really urge people to check back with AccuWeather, check that forecast very frequently, because there likely will be some changes in the forecast where we expect the highest winds, highest rain amounts, things like that over the next couple of days. And for the folks in the United States mainland, right now we don't expect any real direct impacts, but please keep an eye on the forecast as things can still change. Remember, this is 7 days out up here, way up at the top here. That's 7 days out. Things can still change between now and Halloween.
Alex DaSilva, lead hurricane forecaster at AccuWeather. Thank you so much for joining us, and everyone stay safe out there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.